All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. If we haven't met before, I'm practicing professional astrologer Stormie Grace, and I practice evolutionary and humanistic astrology, and that is important for you to know because you want to know what kind of lens your astrology is coming through. So if you like that more evolutionary feel, maybe I've been here before, I'm continuing to grow, but also I'm a human, so how the hell am I going to get this done? Then this is the kind of astrology for you. And I'm so thrilled to welcome back to the channel, Melissa LaFara. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, Stormy. It's good to be back on the channel. It's been a hot minute or a hot year or a hot couple years, but I'm so glad to be back.
Yes, because you came and you taught a class for us in the YouTube Academy, which was divine. Thank you again for doing that.
Yes.
That was such a time. Do you remember we were doing that? What a time.
I do remember. I remember the whole, I mean, and not even just doing it. There were two re iterations, right? There was, I remember the whole crowdfunding aspect and getting all these amazing astrologers on board and just the service to the community. Like that was what it was behind to, get quality people teaching inspirational astrology and then giving it to the public which was really helpful in the times that we were going through. So kudos to you, Stormy, and all who participated. It was so fun to do.
It was a delight. So thank you again for doing that. And so today we're going to talk about some Venus because not only do we have the Venus retrograde going on right now, which is just so beautiful and massive. And if you are new to the channel or you haven't been around for a minute, there is a Venus retrograde playlist that is going on for you. So check out all of the videos that are in there because not only is the Venus retrograde happening now, but it's really going to play a part in the entirety of your year and how you're getting to work with the review and the reclamation that Venus is bringing in. But sometimes it's just so much more simple than needing to look at these big transits. It just comes down to this concept that Melissa and I were talking about of, yeah, but what is just your Venus in your chart doing? What is it about? Do you know it? How do you receive? Where is your ease, your stress reduction, as Stephen Forrest calls it? So I wanted to bring Melissa back to the channel, and that's what we're going to talk about today is getting to know the Venus in your chart. So yeah, tell us about that. You because you just made it really simple. I saw you on Instagram. You're like, you know what, friends, listen.
Listen here. I think, well, I recently taught a Venus retrograde journaling workshop. And as I was putting concepts together, I mean, it dawned on me something that a lot of times we forget is that as we're going through these major transits and we're feeling it coming in the skies, and we know Venus is going to go retrograde, and these are the signs affected. We really have to take it back to what our natal Venus is, because at the end of the day, we are operating with a Venusian archetype already in our charts, what we came in here with, and well, obviously how we evolve into our Venusian archetype. But we really have to reconnect with her on that basic level of, what sign is she in? What house is she in? What houses does she rule? What does she like? What does she not like? What are her values? What's her love language? And so when we get back in touch with who our Venus is, how we've evolved into her, and then as the siren goes by, they're like, this is important. As we evolve into her, this is where we can start to take that the transits of Venus and her retrograde cycle and start to really factor it into what our own natal Venus is doing and how she's growing through Venus's outside movement. But we have to know who she is at the core first. Does that make sense? Did I simplify
Absolutely.
that or not?
No, that's brilliant because it really like I loved what you were saying because we all have a chart. So even if you're just really new to astrology or you've been practicing for a while, but you've forgotten because Venus can sometimes pulsate in the chart as a softer energy. And we're not always paying a lot of attention to it now when things get off and we've got these repeat patterns in relationships and conflict resolution, lockups with our money, these kinds of things where we've been in a state of comfort because Venus also signals what I like, right? And too long that it's creating problems, this is where the call to come back to it and say, well, what is this about in the first place? And I had this vision when I was watching you talk about this on Instagram of living in the same house with, 10 people and you're around them, but like, do you know them?
Yeah, that's funny. Do you know them? Do you know them? Well, and it all came back, because I had the idea for the workshop when I was in the shower and I was just playing out. I feel like all my best ideas come in the shower. Maybe it's because I'm a Venus in Cancer. I'm not sure, but I got a lot of water in my chart. But it dawned on me, I was like, okay, well, here we're having this Venus retrograde in Aries, and she's going to go back into Pisces. But on a very simple level, where I started with this concept of was, well, how does our natal Venus feel about Venus in Aries? How does it feel about Venus in Pisces? Because for me, say this Venus in Cancer, chances are, from a very simple standpoint, is when Venus is in Aries and she stations, she's going to challenge me in some way with my natal Venus significations. Now, maybe when she goes back into Pisces, I'll feel more at ease with the energies that she's bringing forth, and maybe I can receive them a little better. But from like the simplest standpoint, my water Venus with this fire Venus is going to be a little, it's going to be a little, I don't want to use the word challenging per se, but I mean, challenging to my own awareness of Venus in my chart and maybe asking something different of my Venus that is going to challenge her to engage with it.
So, as we're thinking about the chart, and I'm someone who's maybe newer and I'm grabbing my chart or I'm coming back, how do you get to know your Venus?
Mm.
How do we just start and even come into it?
Well, on a very basic thing, we want to know what Venus represents. I think what we might be assuming people know. I mean, Venus is the goddess of love, right? So of course she's this relationship component, uh, but she's also this sense of harmony and peace and ease that we're going to find in our chart. Our ability to relate to others, yes, but to be able to relate to ourselves and to find this sense of wholeness within the self. Um, we talk about her being this piece of justice and equality, and feeling like we are in balance with life. We need our Venus to be in balance. Um, of course, there's just the attraction principle. What are we attracted to and called in? How do we open up? I think that's a big thing with Venus energy is this idea of opening up. Like, where are you open? Stormy and I were talking about receiving before we got on the program here because it's such a huge Venusian principle. So now that we know that about her, so then we want to look at, well, what sign is she in? Get very basic. What element is she representing? Is she watery, where she wants to merge, and she's maybe empathetic? She's has can feel other people. She's more in tune there. Maybe a little dependent or codependent at times. Is she airy? Is she intellectual? Is she buzzing around like a little bee or a butterfly and likes to be social and share ideas? Is she fiery? Is she in the moment? She's passionate. She's just going for things, and just inspired by life. Or is she earthy? Like she's very sensual or down to earth and needs to touch and feel and embody in some way. So just even these very basic principles, starting there, I think can help you get in touch with what you're attracted to, how you open up, what feels comfortable for you, and how you can relate to others.
Yeah, which is a really nice way to just start to consider this or come back into that conversation. And then with the retrograde, to observe those things, just observe what's currently happening, right? Noticing that attraction pattern, right? Just notice your attraction patterns. What qualities do you admire or have you like been pulling in to you? And that's great because it also lends itself to looking at those past relationships, right? What have my patterns been in the past, not just romantically, but like in how I express any kind of affection or desire coming into my life, financial stuff, being able to just observe how Venus is flowing in your life and seeing is it Am I flowing? Am I at ease? Can I be open? Am I defensive as everything is, going on around me? Am I defensive when I interact in a masculine container? What happens then? Right? So I think this is such a nice time for this conversation and to say, what's coming up for me? And then go back and say, well, what's the evolution of my Venus by element or sign or house? And then how can I speak to that? Bring that up a little bit more, engage in pleasurable activities, realign. What would that be like? Like, what would a realignment of your Venus energy look like and show up in your life and feel in your body? That's like a lot.
Mm, that sounds lovely. Who doesn't want to be aligned? The realign with the pleasure principle, which is essentially the attraction principle, magnetism, like we all want to be a magnet for what it is that we desire and want out of life. But we do have to be in touch with our Venus because Venus is going to help us get those things and she's going to help us understand what those things actually are for us when we talk about value consciousness and such. And I think this is one of the things we also have to consider with Venus, aside from elements and whatnot, is dignities, because in certain signs, Venus will be more comfortable than in other signs. And when we think about Venus in Libra and Venus in Taurus, these are the signs of her domicile. So there's a comfort to her signification in your chart if you have her in these signs. Now, of course, it could be mitigated by maybe some tense aspects or supporting aspects, but either way, there's a sense of comfort with what Venus means. But maybe when Venus is in Aries or in Scorpio, and these are the signs of detriment, or when Venus is in fall in Virgo, there might be a natural discomfort or not so natural with Venus significations, because in the chart there are some challenges there. And it doesn't mean it's a bad planet or a bad Venus by no means at all. But there can be this realization that when we talk about being softer, being open, receiving, uh, knowing your wants, being in tune with your values. Well, maybe this is a bit of a rocky road, or there's just an instability there, or maybe sometimes it's working harder to really embody what Venus means. She just wants to lay around, but Venus and Virgo is like, no, but I got to be doing something. I've got things to take care of, or I'm thinking about this. I can't like just check out, these types of things.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% because I feel like what I've experienced is people kind of coming to this idea too, and we were talking a little bit about it, where it's like, well, maybe I don't have Venus like that, and I'm not meant to be soft, or I'm not meant to be whatever. And I'm like, well, looking at if there is a detriment, right, or whatever the sign placement is of your Venus, I think it's always going to be some version of receptive, but understanding and innovating if your planet is in some kind of detriment or fall position, how that is, but getting clear on it. What does your Venus value the most? How does it want to be loved? How does it want to receive? What brings your Venus actual joy? Actual joy, because that's going to be when you know it, how you can see that your Venus expresses that unique beauty, that unique charm, and thus like calls things to you. Because I don't teach Venus as a hustle hard planet. Right? When Venus is in hustle hard mode, I think that's actually the harder experience of Venus. Instead, Venus is like, oh, I'm going to point my hips at that because that is what I desire. That's what I value. I'll create life from that. I'll call it to me. But clarity does a lot to enhance how we can work with that Venusian story, no matter where it's at.
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up such a great point because I mean, there's few things in life, especially energetically, that want to be pursued. So it's the idea, especially when we think about maybe Mars ruled Venuses in the Aries or Scorpio, when there's this constant pursuit of the desire or what you want. Can get farther away.
Yes.
It started running away, and you're like, wait a second, come here. And like you grasp, and it's just a little more distant. But then it's more so maybe if all that passion and that charge was just reconfigured into the calling in process or the like feeling it embodied and like just radiating what it is that you want and having energy behind it. But it's not a pursuit. It's more about energizing the magnetism and then letting it come to you. So it is
Yes.
a comfort value. And I mean, who's to say? Like right now, we got Venus in Aries, right? Venus in going retrograde in a sign of detriment is an opportunity to change things Venus. Like it creates a instability in the archetype itself. So this can be exciting, right? Say you have Venus in Libra natally. And so you got a good, I don't want to say good or bad. There's not a good or bad, but you have a comfortable Venus that's like, I know Venus things and I like socializing. I like working with people. I meet in the middle. But maybe in this Venus retrograde moment in Aries, you've met in the middle too many times and maybe your desire is not being met. And so there needs to be self first, or there needs to be autonomy, or there needs to be this being direct in relationships or in a legal matter or etc. And so even though the Venus, just because she's comfortable doesn't mean that she doesn't need to get uncomfortable to actually get the things that you desire.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could not agree more because just because something is comfortable doesn't mean that it is healthy. And just because something is comfortable does not mean that it is aligned. And that's where I think that the retrogrades are gifts because they do give us, a significant amount of time to go back over and go, is this true? Is this true? And Venus retrograde wants to reclaim. I just want to reclaim what's true, what's mine, but I also have to see it and get honest about like what it is. But then once you do, right? You can get on busy doing that. I have Venus in Aries. I have Venus in Aries at the Aries point. So I literally used to just go around and like if I wanted something, I would go like club it over the head and like drag it back to the love layer. And then I get tired of that real fast. And I was like, okay, this isn't very exciting. You're not running anymore. Like, why aren't you running? I need to be chasing things. And instead, it was actually Spencer Michelle who told me, he's like, actually, I know, right? Another Cancer, love him.
I
He
know.
said, actually, Venus in Aries is more like just think aggressively friendly and tell it to come to you. And I was like, I mean, it shifted so much for me to have that perspective. And the way that I use it now is I use it in colorology. What I want, I go put on the color of what I want and then tell it to come, right? And it's pretty direct. And it's a way to innovate and learn to work with our Venus because your Venus has a lot of charm too. Use your color, use your style. Venus is about aesthetic as well. Tell it what you want that you want it. But you have to get clear on what you want and why you value it. And that's what I think we have a chance to do, getting to know the natal Venus and then using the retrograde time. But yeah, some of it, if you're in square, that might be a little harder.
Yeah. And we're all on our own journey, right? We're feeling it out. And so this is an opportunity, right? To I mean, I'm really looking I mean, Venus in Aries. I'm looking at it as a reinvention of the self. We always think about uh, a lot of times the Venus retrograde journey gets tied into the Ainana story and this stripping away of the aesthetics. Venus can be a lot about conditioning, how we are being conditioned in life and how we break away from that conditioning, which is very much a Venus and Aries thing, right? The people around me modeled this and then I became that. And maybe that's my aesthetic or that's how I relate to people. But Venus in Aries is like, no, but who are you? What do you value? What are your desires? 'Cause let's face it, life is changing at a rapid pace right now. 2025 is full of opportunities for dynamic shifts to happen. So I think of this particular retrograde as an invitation especially after Mars did its thing, right? Mars already retrograded. Venus is now taking the baton. It's in Mars's sign. So, how do we integrate our desires and our passion in life? And how do does that reinvention or that shedding of that skin or getting down to what actually matters, how does that then maybe support or contest what your natal Venus is used to? So this is more about just information, because when we know these things, then we can be maybe a little more objective about the journey and what's being asked of us now.
Yeah, which is a beautiful, beautiful place to be. And I love that Mars went retrograde and is now like out of bounds, living his best out there life. And then Venus goes retrograde because I cannot tell you how many times it has been a lovely thing to watch my husband go through something and I'm just like holding space. And then he comes to the other side and then I start going through something and he's like, have you considered this? And I kind of feel like in the dance of the lovers in the zodiac, like it's a good conversation where Mars is like, girl, it's going to be all right. But here's some things to think about. Here's some things we can do differently for this reinvention. But they're so emotionally and value based, But I think when we come to the other side, it's going to be like, yeah, okay, this is at this point in my life the genuine true thing that I do value. And so I will have it in my life. Because that's the other thing I like about Venus. If you desire it enough, you'll make it come into your life, which
Yeah.
is a good thing. And sometimes that looks like chaos, but that's okay. Like Venus is the daughter of Uranus. We need to remember, girl was born of chaos. So there is something a bit chaotic about how this may go down. And
Well, and that's fine, right? And we just
yeah,
open to the chaos. We open to that's the when you think about the feminine principle or the idea of the void, right? It's or the idea of the womb. It's like a dark space that has the all of creation inside it. And so we kind of have to like kind of succumb to that space. And I think that's a lot of what the rebirth is
yeah,
with, of course, the Cazimis when Venus meets the sun. Of course, Mercury is going to meet the sun around the same time. So there's just something about eclipses. I mean, there's such an opportunity in this particular Venus retrograde. Um, and I think also if you want to take the natal aspect a little bit further, especially if you know a little bit more about astrology or especially phasal relationships, such as the Sun Venus synodic cycle, we have different times when our Venus is really activated and aligned with the solar juice, I guess we could say. And so when you think about it, were you born with Venus retrograde? Do you have Venus retrograde in your chart? Were you born before Venus went retrograde, maybe? Or were you born right after she stationed direct? Because for during this time period, people that have those charts are going to be what is known as from Robert Blatchke talked about holographic transits. And so there is a mirroring of the transit with in the synodic cycle in the sky between Sun and Venus, and then in your chart. So, say you were born with Venus retrograde and she is maybe 10 degrees away from the sun. And when that aspect hits, you're going to have a Venus, but you're aligned with your Venus then. So, pay attention if you do have, especially if you have a Venus retrograde during this transit, because this is your alignment more so,
right.
even more so than others.
Yeah, like you're in. You're in. It's like we're all running back inside to like look at what all the things are, and you actually kind of get to run out now. It's like, hey, I've been thinking about this stuff for a really long time, and now you can kind of come and have that expression. So definitely, like I love that. It's such a good reminder. If you have Venus retrograde, check it out. What's happening for you that maybe is more of an outward expression at this time because it's more comfortable. Your Venus is like, ah, I know this. I know this landscape.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, people are like, why? If you're born in Mercury retrograde, the Mercury retrograde comes around and they're like, yeah, I'm doing just fine, right?
That's
Because
right.
it's this phasal relationship, right? So
Yeah.
it's just brings you in touch with what is natally your signature, from a cycle standpoint.
Yeah.
So
Which is so cool. Now you have some of your own kind of Venusian stuff going over there. You made this amazing tarot deck, tarot for her.
Yes, Tarot of Her.
Of
This is
her.
yes, we have this we kickstarted it in 2023. Um and we've been sold out for a while. Uh I co-created this deck with one of my besties, Sarah Jane Lambert, who is an amazing artist. And so yeah, we had this synergy. When you think about Venus, right? We had this synergy where I would write these stories and then she would paint this a card, and we just went through this whole process of creating these round cards. Um, that then I created a way to read them with lunar phases. So depending on how they fall on the table, we are going to read them in this, once again, phasal relationship. And
Right.
so it's all centered around feminine principles like the divine feminine, the lunar phases, just the receptivity of Venusian energy. We kickstarted it when Venus stationed direct in Leo back in 2023 during our last Venus retrograde. And it was a success. And so we are in the process of finishing an expansion pack for it. And we'll be doing another Kickstarter here, most likely in spring, sometime in spring, probably in May. So if you are a tarot buff, or this is something that interests you, or you want to support female creators, Tarot of Her, check it out, tarotofher.com.
Yeah, and what another really nice resource to come into that Venusian kind of vibe. I'm all about us having the resources to come to it because it's not natural for everyone to come into that divine feminine space. It's not. And we weren't all raised with coming into that. We weren't all raised in societies that welcome that. So any resource that kind of can bring us back to ground, bring us back to nature, bring us back to what it is, like I'm a big fan of. So I will make sure that the link is in the description box down below, you guys, so you can check out Melissa. She's absolutely fantastic astrologer. You got the cards. You got a lot going on over there.
Yeah, I do have a lot going on over there. Yeah, another neat, unique feature about the card is actually, you think about tarot decks, usually we hear wands, swords, cups, pentacles. Well, this is actually based on the parts of a plant because all plants have essentially the same energies within it. So our suits are the roots, the stems, the leaves, and the blooms. So that's another fun fact with the Tarot of Her is that it's based on just, Mother Nature. And Venus loves some Mother Nature. We think about the Empress card, which is Venus's card in the deck. She is the representation of Mother Nature, of what is abundant, prosperous, of what is always growing, of what is wild. I think one of the things we forget about Venus is she's a wild child to some extent. She's
Right.
raw,
Born of Uranus. So
born
it
of
does get
Uranus.
a little wild sometimes. And it's brilliant.
That's funny.
Super, super cool. I'm so excited to support that and to share that with the crew over here because I just think you've created something that's beautiful and useful and getting to see you, on the other side of creating that, which I don't know if there's a word that is more Venusian than creation.
Oh my gosh. The whole process, right? I mean, for us with the tarot deck, it took us 10 years. We talked about it for 10 years. And then, sometimes gestation comes at just the right moment. The womb is ripe and then things start to happen because, you just receive and download the energy and it just starts to come together. And that's essentially what happened with us. And so, yeah. But if you are interested in such things, the best thing to do at this point is to go to the website, get on our mailing list, and you'll be the first to know when the Kickstarter pre-page launches, which will then notify you, etc. So we're in notification phase, but that's the best way to engage if you're interested.
That's absolutely beautiful. All right, Melissa, thank you so much for coming back. You're always welcome here. This is a cozy community and we like you, so that's nice.
My
So,
Venus approves.
so you're welcome back anytime. And for you guys watching next, check out one of the other videos in the Venus retrograde playlist. They are built to support you. In one of the videos, we're talking about fixed star curb and how that plays into the story of betrayal, where if we betrayed ourselves. Nicholas Polymenakis came and shared his beautiful energy as he included Mercury and the eclipse story and how that is showing up. So there is some good stuff for you to put on and think about and make Venus in your chart real and make the Venus retrograde real as well. So I will see you in wherever we're journeying together next. Bye, everybody.